Live Talks. I'm Mark New, reporter at Being Patient. Our guest today has a breadth of experience and insight. She's not only an Alzheimer's advocate, but also an author, artist, and musician. She first noticed symptoms of cognitive decline when she was just 49 years old and went on a lengthy journey to figure out her diagnosis. She now focuses on participating in research and advocating for people living with dementia, serving on the National Advisory Council on Aging, National Academy of Sciences, Alzheimer's Clinical Trials Consortium, Dementia Action Alliance, and NIA Advisory Group on Risk Evidence Education for Dementia. And she also wrote a book, Unmasking Alzheimer's, The Memories Behind the Masks. Cynthia Huling Hummel, you are constantly working on something, so I'm very glad you had the time to join us.
Thank you, Mark.
I'd first like to find out, what were some of the early signs of Alzheimer's disease for you?
Well, each of us is different, but some of the early signs for me were forgetting people's names and faces. And as a pastor, that was really problematic. People come to you often with problems and situations, and I often didn't remember people, what they had said to me. That was one of them. I was getting lost on the road. This was, of course, before we had those devices now that help us get to places. I had trouble keeping track of time. I would be late for meetings or forget meetings. I had trouble reading. I couldn't remember what I'd read. And actually, I couldn't remember what I preached on just a few days prior to that. Those were some of the big ones. I got very frustrated in noisy environments, would have kind of a panic attack when I was in a very noisy place. Those are some of the things that really got me wondering what was going on with my brain.
So tell us about your diagnosis and the process of how that happens and what you were diagnosed with.
Oh, sure. It took a long time. It took me 8 years before I got a definitive diagnosis. I went from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, and the doctors were very kind and they were trying to be helpful. Because of my age, many thought it was due to menopause or the fact that I'd had thyroid issues or that I'd had a head injury, that I wasn't sleeping well, that I was under a lot of stress, that I was working on my doctorate. There were just so many pieces of the puzzle. And then I moved to a new church and I kind of had to start the whole process over. It was a different part of the country, a different part of the state, I should say. And so it was a long haul before I was diagnosed with amnestic, mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's disease. Now, my mother had Alzheimer's disease and her only brother had Alzheimer's disease. They were farther along in their journey. Their mother, my grandmother, had some sort of dementia. So it wasn't a surprise. I mean, it was a sadness, but, it was something that was in our family.
So it's now been roughly how many years since you were diagnosed?
Right. I'm not good at math, but I left full-time ministry in 2011 because it was interfering with my ability to be an effective pastor. And so it was in 2011 that I moved from the church where I was and kind of back into the community. And that was really hard. Oh my gosh, it was hard. It's really hard to make friends and go new places when you don't remember who you've met, don't remember names, it's challenging. And my identity was caught up in my profession. I'm a pastor. And that was just heart-wrenching to me. But I'd read the newspaper that there was a class that was starting up for people with Alzheimer's or dementia at the local community center. And so I signed up for it at 8 weeks. And that was really helpful in helping me understand what was ahead. And that was through the Alzheimer's Association.
All right. So tell me some, your thoughts about sort of living well with dementia, in the years since your diagnosis.
Well, for me, I had to get to the point of acceptance. And I think that's true of most people who face a dementia diagnosis. For many people, they're just grief-stricken, and that's a normal reaction. And for different people, it takes a different amount of time to process, what does this mean? I think the question for most of us is, how fast will this progress? How long will I be able to do the things that I love to do? How do I prepare my children, my family, for what's ahead. So kind of taking all that, but it took a while for me to move from why me to what's next, because I had to grieve my old life. But once I got connected with the Alzheimer's Association, I served on the local advisory board, and they nominated me for the national board. That just kind of opened a whole new chapter in my life. And suddenly, just telling my story and being able to talk about living well with dementia, and my new role then was to be an advocate and an ambassador. I got involved in a study, the ADNI study, the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, and being involved in research. Oh my goodness, that just opened up a whole bunch of new possibilities. So really, I never expected in my entire life that I would be so involved in Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's research. But it's really a blessing. I've met so many wonderful people. I've worked with wonderful people on projects, researchers. I'm just feeling very blessed, and I want others to realize there's hope. You can live a wonderful life in spite of a dementia diagnosis.
And speaking of new chapters in your life, you actually wrote a book, Unmasking Alzheimer's, the Memories Behind the Mask. And
Can I show you? Yeah,
yeah,
there
you
it is.
created and photographed several masks. Tell us about that project, how it came to be, and
Oh my goodness.
we want to see what's in that.
Okay. Yeah, it's full of pictures of my masks. I went to an art program at the Community Arts of Elmira, New York. It was a special program for people living with dementia and care partners. And we'd meet once a month to create a piece of art. And 1 month we did masks. So we were given a blank mask and we could do whatever you want. And people did different things. And so I thought that day I'd want to reflect some of the experiences I was having living with a dementia diagnosis. So this one is called Forget Me Not. And it's just for flowers, that even though I may not remember somebody's name, my heart will remember the emotion I feel for that person. I remember when my mom got to the point in her journey that she no longer remembered me, but she knew I was somebody that she loved. So each of my masks has a story similar to that. This one is don't let the grass grow under your feet. My mom used to say that to us when we were growing up. Get busy and volunteer. Find something to do. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. And so I carried that over into my work as an advocate to help people remember there's still things that we can do to make a difference, to volunteer, whether it's at your local food pantry, at your church or synagogue. Do something to help other people and you'll feel better about yourself. And the other one I brought was that love remembers. Even though I may not be able to remember your name, my heart will remember you. So forget me nots, don't forget me. I'm here. Love me. I'll love you forever, even though I may not be able to articulate that in the same way that I once did. So I went from making one mask to making 36. I had them all over my dining room table. And some of my masks are dark. There's one that's covered with a Depends diaper, because at some point, many of us, all of us, become incontinent. That's just a reality. I have one that's covered with a sponge because my brain feels like a sponge, things falling right out of it every day. I had my keys right here. I keep them on a lanyard and they need to be around my neck because I spend time every day looking for things I lose. It's very frustrating. I used to fake knowing people. Oh, how are you, Mark? Good to see you again, not having a clue. And now I confess to people that I don't remember how I know them. And I ask them to tell me a story about us. Tell me a story about us. And I've heard some amazing stories about things I don't remember anymore. But I had to be willing to receive help. I was always the helper as the pastor, going and visiting people. Now I'm depending on people to help me. But I had to let go of my pride. And that's a hard thing for many of us.
In another way that you are helping. You've been working on the Study Participants Bill of Rights, a
Yeah.
call to action for researchers in Alzheimer's disease. And
Yes. I'm
tell
just
me,
grabbing it
tell me
because
about
it's a
that
book.
project. Yeah.
It was published in the Journal on Alzheimer's Disease. And I was part of a team that wrote about a study participants' Bill of Rights, because many studies don't have the ability or the desire to return individual results to people. Like if you go in, there are things that are urgent. Like if you have an MRI and they see that you've got an aneurysm, that's urgent. That needs to be addressed. But there are other things that are actionable but not urgent. They might detect you of a high blood pressure in the course of a study exam, but that's something that maybe, that the person should know about so they could speak to their doctor about, that situation. There's things that are personally valuable to people. Your Alzheimer's or dementia risk, knowing your ApoE4 status or ApoE status. I have 2 copies of that gene that makes us puts us at a higher risk. But that helps me to understand as I plan for my future. There's things that we have a desire to know about ourselves. And so it's our hope through this paper that researchers will think about the person who's participating in their study, not just as a person who's kind of, I don't want to use the word lab rat, somebody who's coming in to get the study done, but a person with stories, a person with dreams. And we want to know, many of us want to know, what did you find in this study? What has changed since the last time we saw you? If it were a year ago, what has changed in our cognition? What has changed in the scans that you've run? What can you tell me that might help me understand my progression? How much time do I have left to be with my kids, my grandkids? That helps us to know. And so having individual results returned to us is something that we have a right to. But you just can't do it on the fly. It takes a special person to be able to sit down and say, Mark, let's go over your results. This is something that we've noticed. And to do that with compassion and training. So the funding for that has to be built into the study, as the researchers are thinking about the design of their study and looking for funding, that they need to figure into it. So that's something that I've been working on with others to share that with researchers and have them talk about it and move forward. Just like when you go into the hospital, there's a sign that says a hospital patient's bill of rights. People who are in studies want to know. You shouldn't learn of a study that's ending on the news and not hear it from your researchers first. There's just lots of things that need to be considered in research, but we're your partners, researchers. We want to work with you. We want to help find new treatments. We want to get to the point where we can prevent Alzheimer's, that it becomes then a preventable disease, or a disease that's treated like diabetes, or, we're moving closer and closer to that time where it's such a time of hope. And that's one of the things I love about research is there's so much going on right now. And the study that I'm in, the ADNI, they share their data. So people all over the world, researchers can use it.
Yeah, what do you find? Yeah, I was going to say, what do you find hopeful right now?
Oh, just the acceleration, just within the past couple of years, it's moving faster and faster and faster. So I'm excited. I'm going to be at the Alzheimer's International Conference in July. It's going to be in Philadelphia, just to hear what has happened in a year. What do we learn from each other, sharing the data, sharing the results, and sharing the failures. We can learn a lot from failures as well.
Okay. You had so much advice early on. You were talking about, the lanyard. And so what are some key pieces of advice that you can give in your experience? We'd love to hear that.
Oh, yes. My phone is key. I love my little phone. I set alarms throughout the day to remind me of things because I lose track of time. So my alarm went off today, get ready for the meeting with Mark, and throughout the day. That's one thing. When I have an appointment with a doctor or dentist or a provider, I ask them for 3 reminders, a week before, the day before, the morning of. And I ask whenever I'm invited to speak, like on Zoom, 3 reminders. If you can't help me with that, I cannot guarantee I'll be there. It's not that I don't want to, I just get distracted. You go into the bathroom and then you notice something that has to be done, and all of a sudden you're doing a load of laundry, and the meeting that you were supposed to be on is over. I ask people to help me do that. I carry earplugs because I can't take noisy environments. In fact, I also have a big set of like, I don't know the word, but they go over your ears. Sometimes I get aphasia and I can't remember a word. If it's really super loud, then I'll put, my earplugs and my
Big
headphones.
headphones? Big headphones?
Yes,
Yeah.
we,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
came to headphones.
You
Yeah,
actually
we
came
got
up with
it.
it before me. So, okay.
Yeah. So those are some of the things. Um, I put old-fashioned notes right on the floor. I'll write, being patient meeting. So when I get out of bed, I step on it. That's kind of an old-fashioned way. I'll put it in the car, next to the steering wheel. So if I'm going for blood work and I'm not supposed to eat, it says don't eat, blood work. So I won't stop at the Dunkin' Donuts. Um, I have to lay things out. If I'm going somewhere, I lay them all out and I write it down and I check when I pack things. Um, I have to do that. I live alone. I don't have anybody to remind me.
What would your advice be for caregivers trying to, help and assist uh, Alzheimer's, those with Alzheimer's in their demeanor and the way they try to help them? I mean, sometimes you can be put in a difficult situation of whether you want to make sure they understand that they've forgotten something. Do you want to force the issue, or, what's your advice on how a caregiver addresses someone with Alzheimer's?
Well, a couple of things. One is don't be too quick to do everything for your loved one. So often I've seen with people I know and care partners, somebody's diagnosed and they get home and everybody's trying to absorb it. It's go sit down, Mike, we'll take care of everything. No worries. You don't have to drive anymore. We'll take care of the banking. We'll cook for you. You just sit and watch TV. No, we don't want you out in the garage tinkering around because you could hurt yourself. So, no, just sit right there on the couch. And it comes from a place of love and concern. But, it's kind of a use it or lose it. If people do things for us all the time, then we forget how to do those things. So that's number one. Number two, don't argue with somebody, especially somebody in the further along. Give people choices. Don't assume, um, you know, they want to do what you want them to do in that moment. To let people do as much for themselves for as long as they can. Help them find purpose. If you're looking for something to do, volunteer at the food pantry or hand out bulletins at church, or help people find a way they can contribute, because people want to know that they're still able to make a difference. We don't want to be invalids, or we don't want to be a burden. And sometimes the way that people will talk, oh, I have to do, makes us feel like a burden. And don't talk down to us. We are not, most of us, sometimes people talk down to people with dementia because they think we don't understand. Well, it's just insulting. And most people don't make jokes about dementia. Haha, a funny one. Hey, Mark, remember me? You owe me the $5. Sometimes people think it's funny. It's not. I can assure you it's not.
We've actually got a question from a viewer, audience member. What is your advice to those who live alone and have a dementia? How do you keep yourself safe?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. You've got to have your circle of supports. That's, who are the people who are trusted? Do you have a trusted neighbor that you can trust with a key if you lock yourself out, for example? Who do you call in the middle of the night if you have, um, a health emergency? You kind of have to set that up. And if you don't have a family member or you don't have friends nearby to think about other groups that might be good resources. There's so many offices on aging where they have services where people are willing to do those things. Maybe a church or synagogue or mosque where people are willing to do to visit you or help you if you need help driving or getting somewhere. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but also be very careful around scammers. That's such a big deal these days, people getting scammed, not just people with dementia, too. All of us have to be on the alert for that.
I know you seem pretty adept at technology, but when uh, those that are not so good at
I
technology,
know.
anything that you've managed to figure out that they can sort of bridge the gap between utilizing, because there are some great tools today available, but sometimes people just don't have the ability to learn them.
Uh, I was blessed before I became a pastor. I actually worked in technology. I was a computer technician, and people would call the 800 number and I would help them figure out what was going on. So I had that background that gave me that extra. But I would say there's classes, AARP, senior citizens, people who can be trusted to help you maybe choose a technology that might help. Automatic lights coming on when you get up out of bed. That's a helpful one. Um, if you have somebody who's part of your family circle or friendship circle, you might be able to help them with a device that would let them see what's happening in your house. You have to be careful of privacy, of course, but you know, that's something to take care of.
And what about tools today, or just activities that you suggest for staying mentally sharp as long as possible?
Oh yeah, everybody has their favorite things to do, but I can't read anymore, really. No books anyway. I can read short articles. I listen to podcasts. That's kind of fun. I do my Wordle every day and my word searches. What they say, what's good for your brain is to stay, physically active and mentally active and socially active. So I get over to the community center once a week, generally, to have lunch, a congregate lunch. I sing with my friends. I set myself dates. I try to do something with within my circle of friends every day, and they're really good now about calling me and asking me to do things. And, because sometimes I forget, oh, I haven't seen so and so in so long, I'd like to get together, and it could just be for lunch or coffee or for a walk. But if somebody in your circle of friends or your neighborhood is living with dementia, don't be afraid to step up and be their friend, to walk with them, um, you know, to help them feel cared about, and that makes such a difference.
And we haven't even had time to talk about that you are an award-winning musician. Tell me the role that music plays in your life, and also how do you think it affects your brain?
Music is super important. I grew up in a singing household. We used to sing Broadway
Tell us
musicals.
what you won too, though, right? I
Oh,
know.
it was the New York State Country Music Hall of Honor. Um, I sing in a band. I've been singing for more than 20 years in a band, and I just love, we sing rock and roll and country and a little bit of everything. But my heart remembers, my brain remembers the music. And I think one of the things for people living with dementia is to play your music and move to your music. And care partners, that might be a way to engage people with music, to play favorite tunes and get up and move a little. Um, Sometimes a tune, though, will elicit a sad response. People, I sing at a nursing home with my friend Steve. We sing there once a month. And, oftentimes people will sing along with us. They'll remember that song, but sometimes you'll see a tear. And we never know, is that something that connected them to another time or place. but it invokes our emotions. And so that's super important.
All right. Final question. I just want to offer you the opportunity to give a final piece of advice, what you learned of all these years. I know there's a million pieces you've given us already, but if there's one thing you'd like to offer to those living with Alzheimer's.
I think the one thing is instead of why me, try to get to what's next because we can live a happy life, a life with meaning, a life with purpose. If we move from that why me, why is this happening to me, to what's next, how can I help others, even with this diagnosis, to help others on a similar journey, how can I still be active and helping in my community. I think volunteering is the best medicine that there is. I really do.
Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to our audience for tuning in. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on beingpatient.com, where we'll keep you up to date on all the upcoming talks. See you next time.